I can't believe this. I whispered, staring at the table I had spent all week setting. 60 candles on a cake. A roast in the oven. Champagne chilling. And not a single one of my kids showed up. The phone buzzed all day with excuses. Mom. Work's crazy today. I'll call you tomorrow. Sorry. Mom. The baby's sick. Can't make it. Rain check. Okay? One by one, they dropped out. Like it was nothing. But the next morning, when I opened Facebook, there they were. All 3 of my kids. Laughing. Holding glasses of wine. At my best friend Victoria's house. And she wasn't just throwing some casual dinner. No, she had a huge party. Balloons. Cake. Even a stupid happy 60th banner, except it wasn't mine. That was my birthday. My day. And my kids chose her. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling the kind of rage that makes your chest burn. And if you're watching this, don't forget to hit subscribe and tell me where you're from. Because this story, my story, you won't believe how it ends. Anyway, back to that night. I called my eldest, Kevin, first. He picked up with a fake cough. Mom? Hey. Sorry I missed your birthday. How was it? How was it? I snapped. Empty. Quiet. Like a funeral. But you looked like you had fun at Victoria's. Silence. Then a lame laugh. Oh. That, yeah. She just, invited us last minute. We didn't want to be rude. I gripped the phone tighter. You didn't want to be rude to her. But lying to me was fine? Mom. Come on. Don't be dramatic. That word. Dramatic. The one kids use when they want to make their mother sound crazy. I hung up before I said something worse. Next. I called Jessica. She answered with her kids screaming in the background. Mom. I told you. It was impossible yesterday. Impossible? You were drinking champagne with Victoria. Okay. Yes. I stopped by. But only for a little. Don't make it a big deal. You ditched my birthday to celebrate with my best friend. That's not a big deal? She sighed so loud it rattled through the phone. Mom. You're overthinking. We love you. But sometimes it's just easier being around Victoria. She's fun. I laughed bitterly. Fun? You mean she doesn't remind you of your unpaid bills? Your drinking. Your mistakes. See? That's why. Click. She hung up. I stared at the phone. Shaking. Last chance, Emily. My youngest. She sent me straight to voicemail. Not even a lie. Not even the courtesy. I sat alone in my kitchen. 60 candles on a cake that had already gone cold. The silence in that house could have killed me. But here's the thing. That night, something inside me flipped. They thought they could humiliate me. They thought I'd just cry into my wine glass. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I was their mother. And if they wanted war, I'd give them war. The morning after, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I dialed Kevin again. He answered like he was half asleep. Mom. It's Saturday. What's wrong now? What's wrong? I snapped. You stood me up on my 60th birthday. That's what's wrong. He groaned. We already talked about this. Victoria invited us. Anne. And you went running like trained puppies. I cut him off. Jesus. Mom. He muttered. Why do you always make everything into some guilt trip? I clenched my jaw. It's not guilt if it's true. There was a pause. Then he said, coldly, you always have to be the victim. Click. He hung up on me. I sat there, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles went white. Fine. Jessica was next. I called her, and she answered on speaker. I could hear her husband laughing in the background. Mom, can you chill? We already explained, Jessica said. You explained nothing. I shot back. You lied. Said you couldn't make it. Then you partied with Victoria instead. Mom, she said in that fake sweet tone. You're making this bigger than it is. You're being dramatic. There it was again. That word. Dramatic. I laughed. But it came out sharp. You think it's dramatic to expect my own children to show up on my birthday? You think it's dramatic to ask for a little respect? Her husband shouted in the background. Tell her to let it go. Jessica sighed. Mom, you're exhausting sometimes. Exhausting. I hung up. By then, my blood was boiling. Emily was the last one. My youngest. My baby. Surely she wouldn't stab me the same way. But when I called, she answered with a huff. Mom, I don't have time for this. You had time for Victoria. I said flatly. God, are you seriously still on that? Look, it was just a party. You always think the world revolves around you. Not everything's about you. I froze. Not everything's about me? My birthday wasn't about me? She laughed, actually laughed. See? That's what I mean. And then she added the dagger, sometimes. It's easier not to be around you. Click. She hung up. I sat there in my kitchen. The silence louder than any insult. All three of them. My children. My blood. They'd turn me into the villain for daring to want them by my side. But I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I whispered into the empty room, dramatic? You haven't seen anything yet. I reached for the drawer under the counter. Inside, a folder with my lawyer's card. And the draft copy of my will. They thought I was powerless. Just a lonely old woman begging for attention. But one phone call could change everything. And trust me, I was ready to make that call. The next day, my phone rang. This time it wasn't me chasing them, it was Kevin. Mom, he said, voice softer than usual. How are you feeling today? I almost laughed. Yesterday I was dramatic. Today, suddenly, I was worth checking on? Feeling fine. I answered flatly. Why do you ask? There was a pause. Then he said, I was thinking, maybe we could do a late birthday dinner next week. My treat. Really? I asked, letting my tone drip with sarcasm. And what changed overnight? He stumbled. Nothing. I just felt bad. That's all. I smiled to myself. He wasn't the only one. 2 minutes later, Jessica texted, love you. Mom. Want to bring the kids over this weekend? 5 minutes after that, Emily sent a message, thinking of you. Let's do coffee soon. Oh, they were fast. Like wolves catching the scent of blood. But here's the thing, I hadn't even told them yet. Not really. The night before, I'd only muttered it to myself. But apparently, my words had traveled. Because I remembered what I'd said to Kevin. Right before hanging up yesterday. Just one little sentence. Don't forget. I'd told him. The will isn't finished yet. I hadn't planned it. It just slipped out. But that single word, will, it did more than 60 candles. More than 60 years of sacrifice. It scared them. So when Kevin showed up at my door that evening, holding flowers like some soap opera husband begging forgiveness, I let him squirm. Mom. Come on. He said, stepping inside. We shouldn't fight. You know how much I love you. Really? I raised an eyebrow. Loved me enough to spend my birthday with Victoria? His face tightened. That was a mistake. I swear. It'll never happen again. I crossed my arms. You sound worried. I'm not worried. he said too quickly. I just don't want bad blood between us. Bad blood, I repeated slowly. Funny choice of words. Then Jessica walked in uninvited. Mom, she cried, kissing my cheek. I'm so sorry about the other night. The kids were begging to see you. We missed you. I looked around. Where are they? Then? She froze. No kids in sight. Just her, dressed like she'd come from brunch. Next time, she muttered. They're tired. Behind her, Emily appeared at the door, holding a coffee cup. Hey, Mom. Don't be mad. Let's just put this behind us. I stood there, 3 children suddenly in my living room, acting like they cared. It almost would have been touching if I hadn't known the truth. So I leaned against the counter, took a slow sip of my tea, and dropped the bomb properly this time. You know, I said casually. My lawyer keeps asking when I'll finalize the will. Guess I just haven't decided yet. Funny how hard it is to choose who deserves what. The silence was instant. Kevin's eyes flickered. Jessica's jaw clenched. Emily tried to smile, but her hand shook as she set down her coffee. Oh, Mom. Jessica started, her voice too sweet. You don't need to worry about that now. You've got years ahead of you. Maybe, I said, shrugging. But paperwork doesn't sign itself. And I'd hate for the wrong person to end up with everything I worked for. Kevin stepped closer, lowering his voice. You don't have to say that. We're family. We'll always be here for you. I looked him dead in the eye. Were you here for me Thursday night? He swallowed, unable to answer. Emily tried next. Mom, we were stupid. But we're here now. Can't we just start fresh? I smiled. But it wasn't warm. Fresh? Sure. But fresh doesn't erase memories. Or lies. I watched them shift in their seats. Nervous. Calculating. And in that moment, I realized the balance had shifted. Yesterday, I was the dramatic, exhausting mother. Today, I was the woman with the pen, the one who could erase their names from everything they wanted. So I let them sit there, sweating, while I said the words that sealed it. Relax. I told them. I haven't decided anything yet. But when I do, trust me, you'll know. And I laughed. A sharp, cold laugh that echoed in the quiet room. Because for the first time in years, I was the one in control. By Sunday afternoon, I couldn't sit still. My kids' fake apologies still rang in my ears. And the word will hung over their heads like a storm cloud. But I knew there was someone else behind all this. Victoria. My best friend. Or at least, she used to be. I drove over to her place without calling. Her house was 3 times the size of mine. The kind of place people use for magazine spreads. When she opened the door, she was still in her silk robe, holding a glass of wine, like she was the star of her own Netflix drama. Well, look who it is, she said, smiling too wide. The birthday girl. I didn't bother with small talk. Why did you throw that party on my birthday? She tilted her head. Oh, come on, Maggie. Don't be so sensitive. It wasn't about you. Not about me? I stepped inside. Uninvited. You hung up balloons. A banner. 60 candles. You knew it was my birthday. She sipped her wine. Unbothered. Maybe your kids just like my parties better. Her words hit me like a slap. You stole them from me. I said, my voice low. Stole? She laughed. They're adults, Margaret. They can choose where they want to be. And let's be honest, you're not exactly fun to be around. I clenched my fists. You've been talking to them, telling them things. She leaned against the counter, smirking. I don't have to tell them anything. They vent on their own. Kevin, especially. Poor boy. So stressed. He needs someone to listen. I froze. Kevin? She swirled her wine glass, eyes glinting. What? You didn't know? He stops by sometimes. Late. We talk. My stomach turned. You're telling me my son. Relax. She interrupted, chuckling. It's not what you think. Or maybe it is. Either way, he doesn't exactly sing your praises. I took a step closer. You crossed a line. She shrugged. Don't act shocked. You raised selfish kids. Maggie. They're just mine now. Her words echoed in the room. Mine now. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then I leaned in so close she could smell the anger on my breath. You think this is a game? You think you won? She smirked. Honey, I've already won. They came to me, not you. I stared at her, memorizing every smug detail of her face. Because deep down, I knew something she didn't. She thought she'd taken everything. My kids. My birthday. My pride. But she didn't know about the folder in my drawer. The lawyer. The recordings I was about to make. You're right. I said softly, stepping back. You've won. She raised her glass like a toast. Glad you see it. But as I walked out her front door, I whispered to myself, not for long. After that fight with Victoria, I couldn't sleep. Her words replayed over and over, Kevin. Especially. He needs someone to listen. Something in the way she said it. Too smooth. Too confident. Like she knew something I didn't. I went down to the basement, where I kept boxes of old papers. Marriage certificates. Insurance policies. Hospital bills. And buried in one folder, a sealed envelope from 30 years ago, back when Kevin was born. I remembered the whispers even then. How my husband, God rest his soul, had Ghanaian business trips that lasted weeks. How Victoria was always hanging around. Even back then. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was an old hospital form. Blood type information. My husband's. Mine. Kevin's. And something didn't add up. I couldn't stop myself. The next morning, I invited Kevin over for coffee. I smiled sweetly, offered him his favorite mug. He drank, laughed nervously, tried to keep the conversation light. When he left, I slipped the mug into a plastic bag. My hands didn't shake this time. At the lab, the technician asked, Mother and son test? Yes. I said, my voice steady. It took 3 days. 3 long, endless days where I couldn't think about anything else. Then the results came. I sat in my car, envelope on my lap, heart pounding so hard it felt like a drum in my chest. I tore it open, and there it was. Probability of paternity, 0%. Kevin was not my husband's son. I gripped the paper so tight it almost ripped. 30 years of lies. 30 years of raising a boy under my husband's name. And now the truth stared back at me in black and white. Was it Victoria? Was that why she spoke about him like he was hers? I drove home in silence. The city lights blurring around me. My mind was racing. But one thing was clear, this wasn't just family drama anymore. This was ammunition. That night, Kevin called again. Mom. I was thinking, we should get together this weekend. Maybe bring Jessica and Emily too. Family dinner. Family. I repeated slowly, staring at the DNA report in my hand. Yeah. He said quickly. Just us. Like old times. I almost laughed. Old times. He had no idea. You know what, Kevin? I said softly. That sounds perfect. Great, he said, relief in his voice. I hung up, folded the report, and tucked it into the folder with my lawyer's card. Because when the time came, and trust me, this paper would change everything. Blood doesn't lie. And soon, neither would Kevin. By then, I had the DNA report locked in my drawer. One secret bomb, ready to explode. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. See, paper is good. But voices? Voices are better. Voices can destroy. So I planned a little visit. I called Victoria on a Tuesday afternoon. Mind if I stop by? I think we should talk. She chuckled on the phone. Of course. Maggie. Doors always open. I grabbed my purse. And before I left, I slipped a tiny recorder into it. Not fancy, just a cheap thing I bought off Amazon. But it would do the job. When I got there, Victoria hugged me like we were best friends again. Wine? She asked, already reaching for a bottle. No. Thanks. I said. I'll just sit here. She smiled. But then her phone buzzed. Oh. Jessica's coming over. You don't mind, do you? My stomach flipped. Perfect. 10 minutes later, Jessica walked in, holding a shopping bag. Mom? She said, surprised to see me. Just catching up with Victoria. I answered smoothly. Jessica shifted uncomfortably. Oh. Okay. They went into the kitchen, whispering like teenagers. They probably thought I couldn't hear. But I stayed quiet on the couch. Recorder hidden in my purse. Red light blinking. Then I caught it. Jessica's voice, she's getting suspicious. We have to be careful. Victoria's laugh, careful? Please. She's too old to figure it out. And once she's gone, all that money is yours anyway. Jessica hesitated. Ours. You mean? Of course. Victoria purred. We'll share. Trust me. Honey. Once she's out of the picture, we'll have everything. The house. The accounts, she won't even know what hit her. My heart pounded. My own daughter. My best friend. Plotting while I sat 10 feet away. Then Jessica whispered. What if she changes the will? Victoria snorted. She won't. She's all bark. No bite. And if she does, well, we'll make sure it doesn't stick. That was enough. I stood up. Loud enough for them to hear my footsteps. They froze. Eyes wide. As I stepped into the kitchen. Everything okay? I asked. Smiling. Jessica's face turned red. Why yeah, Mom. We were just talking. About me? I tilted my head. No. She blurted. Too fast. I let the silence stretch until it burned. Then I grabbed my purse and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Victoria asked. Her voice tight. Home. I said calmly. Suddenly I don't feel very welcome. I closed the door behind me. Heart still racing. In the car, I pulled out the recorder and pressed play. Their voices filled the small space. Clear. Sharp. Inescapable. I smiled for the first time in weeks. DNA in one hand. A recording in the other. And both of them had no idea I was holding the matches to burn their perfect little game to the ground. I called my lawyer before dawn. Margaret. Claire answered. Voice still sleepy. Everything okay? Not really. I said. I need to put an emergency freeze on anything that's in my name. All accounts. All cards. Foundation funds too. There was a pause. Then Claire's tone shifted. That's drastic. Do you have cause? Do you need a cause? I snapped. Call me later with the paperwork. Freeze it. Now. She hesitated, then agreed. I'll do it. But you realize this will make waves. Good. I hung up. You learn a lot when you stop being the patient mother and start being the person with the pen. You learn how thin the mask of normalis. How fast people melt when money disappears. I drove to the bank. The lobby smelled like coffee and expensive soap. I told the woman behind the glass exactly what I wanted. She asked for ID. I handed over my driver's license and Claire's letter authorizing the freeze. She typed. Clicked. Sighed. Everything will be frozen within the hour. She said. You understand, no transfers. No withdrawals. No credit card charges. I understand. I said. Do it. By the time I got home, my phone blew up. Mom, what did you do? Jessica texted. All caps. Mommy? My card won't go through. Emily. Frantic emoji, ugh. Is this about money? We didn't, Kevin. Trying to sound calm. I didn't answer. I made tea. I waited. Kevin showed up first. Sweating as if he'd run cross-country. He walked in like a man looking for shelter in a storm. Mom. He said. Voice sharp. Why are my cards declined? I didn't need to look at him. I already knew. The bank froze everything this morning. He made a sound, half laugh. Half sob. You can't just do that. We have bills. Mom. We have mortgages. You should have thought about that before you chose someone else's house over mine on my birthday. I said. His face twisted. You're being ridiculous. Am I? I asked. Or are you being careless? He stomped a foot. Like a child. This is punishment. Fine. I sat at the kitchen table. Hands folded. Then consider it a timeout. Jessica arrived with Jessica-level energy, hair perfect. Voice practiced. Mom. What's going on? My accounts are frozen. Kevin said. You knew about this? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Tried smiling. Mom. We'll figure it out. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic again. I repeated. Their go-to. Like a song on repeat. Emily barged in next. Phone in hand. My card was declined at Target. I had to call a friend. Her eyes were wet. Mom. You can't do this. Oh. Can't I? I asked. Let me guess, Victoria paid for your drinks last night? She's generous like that. They all looked at each other. No one defended Victoria. Funny how that works. Kevin slammed his palm on the counter. You'll unsettle everything. The foundation. The foundation is a separate entity. I said. For now. Claire handled the legalities. You want to know why? Because you chose to spend my birthday somewhere else. Because you lied. Because you think money will always be there. Jessica's voice dropped to a whisper. You can't keep us from our lives. Watch me. I said. They scrambled then. Calls to in-laws. Texts to exes. Pleas to friends. Can you spot me? They asked. It was humiliating to watch. My children. Suddenly reduced to asking favors. An hour later. Kevin called Claire. I overheard him through the open kitchen door. Claire. This is Kevin. My mother, what did she do? Can you reverse it? I need access. Claire's tone was formal. Mr. Harris. Your mother has the authority. If she authorized a freeze, we cannot unfreeze without her consent or a court order. Kevin cursed. She's gone too far. Then get her to sign. Claire said. Or file through the courts. He slammed the phone down like a man who lost a limb. They looked at me then. All three of them. Suddenly small. Suddenly uncertain. This is petty. Jessica said. And the word was an accusation and a confession. Petty? I laughed. You think this is about petty? This is about boundaries. About respect. You left me on my birthday. You chose someone else. You lied to my face. Kevin tried a softer tone. We made a mistake. Mom. We're sorry. Sorry won't unring that bell. I said. But apologies are useful. They can open doors. They can help you now. He swallowed. What do you want? I leaned forward. For starters, truth. No more lies. You'll tell me where you were every minute of that night. You'll tell me why Victoria hosted a surprise party when she knew it was my birthday. And you'll stop spending other people's money like it's a buffet. They scoffed. They called me petty again. They called me cruel. They said I was punishing them for nothing. I let them say it. I let the words hit. Because I had already moved the pieces. I had DNA. I had a tape. I had a lawyer. I had a bank that took orders. They had panic. They had fear. And they had to ask me, beg me, for help. There was a knock at the door then. A sharp, official knock. I opened it. 2 men in suits. Mrs. Carter? One said. We're with the bank's fraud unit. We received some suspicious activity reports connected to your accounts. My mouth went dry. What kind of reports? We're investigating potential misappropriation linked to transfers that occurred recently. He said. We'd like to ask you a few questions. I looked at my kids. Their faces were white. Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. Kevin looked like he wanted to run. I smiled. Come in, I said. I have time. They entered, briefcases and all, and shut the door behind them. The room smelled like coffee and the beginning of something big. I poured more tea. The kettle hissed. Outside, the sky had turned that gray, honest kind of color, no hiding anything. Inside, the householder was no longer a passive target. I was the one asking questions now. And the first of those questions was simple. Who benefited from the transfers? I asked. Looking at my children. They looked down. No one spoke. Good. Let them stew. Let them answer once the truth is on the table. The envelope came on a Thursday morning. No return address. Just my name. Handwritten in neat block letters. I almost tossed it with the junk mail. But the weight made me pause. Thick. Heavy. Too deliberate. Inside, copies of bank statements. Wire transfers. Checks with forged signatures. All pointing to one name. Victoria. She had siphoned money from the foundation. My foundation. Money meant for scholarships. Community programs. Real people. And she used it to fund her parties. Her designer clothes. Her endless glasses of wine. At the bottom, a note in red ink. She thinks no one will notice. Send this to the FBI. For a second, I just stared at the papers. Then I laughed. Not a happy laugh, an ugly, sharp one. Because finally, someone else had decided to hand me a weapon. I called the bureau. I didn't even hesitate. 2 days later, they called me back. Mrs. Carter, we appreciate your cooperation. Could we arrange a time to collect the originals? Come anytime, I said. My door is open. That Monday, the knock came. Not like the bank investigators. No. This was harder. Louder. The kind that makes neighbors peek through curtains. FBI. Open up. I opened the door. 4 agents stood there. Windbreakers with yellow letters. They flashed badges. Stepped inside. Kevin, Jessica, and Emily were in the living room. They froze. What's this about? Kevin asked. Voice cracking. Search warrant. The lead agent said. We have reason to believe funds were misappropriated from the Carter Foundation. Funds? Jessica stammered. What does that mean? It means someone's been stealing. The agent said flatly. They began collecting boxes, pulling files, scanning laptops. The house filled with the sound of printers, zippers, radios crackling. Then came the real moment. Another knock. This time, Victoria herself walked in like she owned the place. She saw the jackets, the badges. Her face drained of color. What is this? She asked, voice shaking. Victoria Hale? The agent said. We need to ask you a few questions. She dropped her purse. This is insane. You can't just barge in. Ma'am, we have a warrant. They handed her the paper. She scanned it, hands trembling. No, this isn't. But it was. Oh, it was. My kids looked at me, horror in their eyes. Mom, did you do this? Emily whispered. I smiled calmly. I told you the truth always comes out. Sometimes it just needs a little push. Victoria turned on me, eyes wild. You set me up. I raised an eyebrow. Did I forge those signatures? Did I transfer that money? Or did you? She couldn't answer. The agents cuffed her wrists gently but firmly. Ma'am, you're under investigation. You'll need to come with us. She shrieked. Kevin! Tell them I'm not. Kevin couldn't even meet her eyes. He just stared at the floor, pale and silent. They led her out. Cameras were already waiting. Reporters shouted questions. Flashbulbs popped. And inside, my house was silent except for the kettle whistling on the stove. I poured tea slowly, the way my mother used to. My kids sat on the couch, staring at me like they didn't recognize me anymore. Finally Jessica spoke, voice barely above a whisper. Mom, what did you do? I sipped my tea, let the warmth slide down, and smiled. Nothing, I said. I just told the truth. The rest? That was all. Victoria. Outside, the sirens faded. The world shifted. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one on trial. By sunrise the next morning, Victoria's face was everywhere. Local news ran the headline in bold red letters. Socialite charged in foundation fraud. The footage played on repeat, her silk robe slipping off her shoulders as FBI agents walked her down my front steps. Cuffs gleaming under the porch light. She was shouting. Hair flying. Lipstick smeared. By noon, it wasn't just local. National networks picked it up. Even Netflix gossip blogs were circling, whispering about a docuseries in the making. And my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Neighbors. Distant cousins. People I hadn't spoken to in 20 years. Everyone wanted a quote. Everyone wanted to know, how much did she steal? How long had it been going on? Did you know? I ignored them all until the cameras showed up at my door. 3 vans. A dozen reporters. Microphones shoved in my face. The kids panicked. Closing curtains. Ducking behind furniture like criminals. One reporter shouted, Mrs. Carter, were you aware of the theft? Another yelled, do you feel betrayed by your friend? And then came the sharpest, what do you think about your children attending her party instead of your birthday? That one hit home. I stepped forward. Steady. Calm. My kids hissed from behind me, don't say anything. No comment. Mom. No comment. I ignored them. I faced the cameras. Looked straight into the lens. As if I were talking to the person at home. The viewer. The stranger on their couch. And I said, clear as glass. Some people think they can eat from a table forever, without ever setting it. They forget who cooked the meal in the first place. The crowd went still for a second, then erupted. Questions flew like bullets. Are you talking about Victoria? Your children? Both? I didn't answer. I turned, closed the door, and let their voices fade to muffled noise. Inside, Kevin stared at me. Do you have any idea what you just did? Yes. I said simply. Jessica wrung her hands. Now everyone's going to think They already think. I cut her off. And maybe they're right. Emily whispered. Mom, you don't mean that. I smiled coldly. Don't I? Outside, the news vans rolled away, chasing the next headline. But I knew this one wouldn't die so fast. This one would burn for weeks, maybe months. And in that fire, my children would feel the heat. Because I hadn't just exposed Victoria. I had drawn a line in public. A line the whole world could see. And now, crossing me wasn't just family drama. It was a story. A spectacle. A scandal with an audience. I invited them over. All three. No excuses. No work is crazy. Nuth baby's sick. They came. Because now, they were scared. I set the table one last time. Not with cake. Not with candles, just plain plates. Silverware. And a folder sitting in the center like a centerpiece. Kevin sat first, fidgeting with his phone. Jessica poured herself water. Hands trembling. Emily stared at the floor. I didn't waste time. I pushed the folder toward them. Go on. I said. Take a look. Jessica opened it. Pulled out the first document. Her face strained. DNA? Kevin leaned over. His jaw clenched as he read the line. Probability of paternity, 0%. Not dad's. I said quietly. And you know what that means. Kevin. He slammed the paper down. This is garbage. You had no right. I had every right. I cut him off. 30 years of lies gave me that right. Emily whispered. Mom. Please. I slid the recorder across the table. Pressed play. Victoria's voice filled the room. Once she's gone, all that money is yours anyway. Then Jessica's voice, ours. You mean? Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. Mom. I didn't. Don't bother. I snapped. I heard it once. I don't need to hear it again. Kevin shoved his chair back. So what? This is your revenge? Destroy your own kids? Humiliate us? Humiliate you? I laughed coldly. You did that yourselves. You abandoned me on my birthday. You lied to my face. You plotted with a thief. And now you want to cry victim? Silence. Just the sound of the recorder clicking off. I stood, gathered the folder, slipped it back under my arm. I've already spoken to the lawyer. The will is changing. Effective immediately. Jessica's voice cracked. Mom, no. Please. Don't do this. You made your choice. I said flatly. You chose her. Emily's eyes filled with tears. We were stupid. We were wrong. We'll fix it. I leaned down, met her eyes. Fix yourself. Don't fix me. I walked to the door. None of them followed. They just sat there, pale and broken, like kids caught stealing from a store. Hand on the knob. I turned one last time, and I gave them the only gift they'd get from me that night. I spent 60 years giving you everything. From now on, I give you nothing. Then I opened the door, stepped into the cold night air, and didn't look back.